When I was injured, it was a bomb, a Russian bomb, and I jumped out from the wagon because it's a railway station. And I said, I can't walk. I didn't know what happens, but I can't walk. And I can't go back in the wagon for nothing because I can't walk. And the wagon was already burning. So one boy who lives in Israel, he tried the finger was hanging here. The fingers was hanging on the skin. And he grabbed me here and he took me on his back. I said to him, Lippy, that was his name, take me down. I am finished here. I have to die here. I have such a pain. Shall I show you my leg? I couldn't walk because I was 8 months in hospital, not about my hand, about my leg. And I was lying there under another wagon where it wasn't burned and was waiting to die. No, joking. I couldn't walk. I was full with blood, my face, the hand, the whole body. And it was cold. It was 7th of March, 1943. 7th of March is an unforgettable date for me. But before this, 20 years, it was a big celebration, the 7th of March. 7th of March is the date of the birth of the first president, Masaryk. I don't know if you heard about him, but on that day I was injured. So then came some with a torchlight, 2 German soldiers, and they start to, I haven't got any strength, but they start to call Hilfe, Hilfe, that means help. They went away, but they came back later and bring a stretcher and put me on the stretcher, and it was about 11 o'clock in the night when I got in the hospital, in German military hospital, in Gomel. The town where I was injured is the name Gomel, that is in White Russia. I'm in there for a couple of days, and I was asleep, you know, by the operation. They cut me the fingers, but I heard when the doctor talked to the assistant doctor, they cut me the leg here. And I said, I was by my conscience. And I told the doctor in German, ich gebe nicht meinen Fuß. And the doctor looks at me and said to me, you speak German? I said, yes. He said to me, you are afraid? I said, of course I'm afraid, but I'm not giving my leg. He said to me, the doctor, all right, we'll leave you the leg, but if something will happen, then you make for yourself excuses. The German soldier, the SS man, made on my cover of my injury history 3 times on 1 page that I am a Jew. I have seen this much later than it happens in Warsaw in the hospital when I got the first bath. That was going always together with the injured person. I was brought to Warsaw, and the next day they took me in another hospital with an excuse that there is a few Hungarians. I couldn't resist, and I have to listen to them. A couple of days later, I was taken really to the bath. They washed me, a sister. Then they took me in the operation room. The doctor there was looking on my papers. That papers what I have seen a couple of days before. So I recognized it that he's looking on my description, what a treatment I got till that day, because everything was written there. I remember I was already on the operation table, and he was standing next to his desk and reading this and looking on me. Reading this and looking on me. I was already sure that was a little bit strange to him. I have to point out that it was an older gentleman, a doctor. I couldn't stand because we didn't know everything what happens in Central Europe with the Jewish people. Very little what we know about the happenings. So I couldn't sit there. I just take courage and said to the doctor the following: Doctor, ich habe meine Pflichten gemacht. In German. That means I have made my duties. He answered me, I don't care who you are. I am a doctor. I'm doing my duty. He made really, on the 6th of my operation, one of the biggest operations. I wake up after the operation, I feel I am from here, from the breast to the end of my left leg in a plaster, how you call it? Cast, in a cast. I was taken from the operation table by 4 helpers and the doctor. They put me on a table, and on a table they put on top of me like when the driver is going under the, what do you call it? Hello, good. You know, under a tunnel. I was covered with a tunnel, but the tunnel has from inside electric balls. There was dead balls, the heat of the electric balls was drying the cast of me because it was fresh, you understand? So they make me that operation. So I can say the doctor was a human being. I have seen this paper about myself twice in the future days. One happens that from Warsaw, I couldn't sleep. One night, I heard a big rush. So one of those attendants on the hospital came in and asked him, what is that rush? And he said to me, you are going home. I was treated like a Hungarian soldier. I said, what do you mean home? They didn't know what is home. They said Budapest. That was his answer. So I was very happy. It happened so that next day, about 10 o'clock, I was taken again on a stretcher and out to the railway station. On that railway station, I don't know if somebody has seen such a wagon. There is about 40 beds, one about 1 foot from the floor, the other one in the middle of the window, and the third one up. That means I, who was very hard to handle me, I said to the men, they took me in through a wide door. They have everything, the Germans, what they have made, took me in, and I was on the 2nd row. 3 people was already placed. And I know that can't use other language, just German. I said in German, Sunny, give me in the Mitte. That means sunny, that means the sanities. So he put me in the middle so I can see out through the window. And below me was one man on the top of me. So they shift me in, I was very good, and he came to me, you speak German? I said yes, because in that whole wagon I've been the only one who speaks German. That was an advantage to me in a certain way, because on the first, that was about 10 o'clock in the morning, about 2 hours later, an officer came in with another one, 2 officers, one was most probably the doctor. I don't know the distinctions on the shoulder. And so my name is written because they have such a piece of steamer that claps up, you know, so I couldn't fall out. There was written the name. They asked me the name. I said Wolf. Just the name Wolf. So, and about 6 o'clock in the evening, they give us dinner, but after dinner came in about 4 people, the doctors, the mind doctor. And that young doctor who was in the morning there, he shows on me, he said to the chief doctor, most probably, that man speaks German. He came to me, he asked me, you speak German? I said, yes. Ask him what the neighbor, he starts with on the first row, was the trouble with him. So I was a translator to the whole wagon. I was in between, but the last one, he came to me and asked me, what is with you? I said to him, I show him, because my right hand was good, how I'm injured. I'm in a cast plaster. Where from are you? I said, I'm from Carpathian. He asked me, Uzhhorod? I said, 130 miles, a little bit further to the east. So I'm Hungarian, yes. What is my profession back home? I said, I'm a druggist. I was working. I didn't say I have a druggery. I'm a druggist. This is my profession. Have you been on a holiday? I said, no, we didn't get. How long have you been on the front? So I said to him, 18 months. 18 months I've been on the front. No, 20 months. 20 months I've been on the front. So he gave me a lot of questions. And I can't remember exactly what was the question, but a lot of questions. He uncovered me, he looked at me and said to me, what was your weight in civil life? I said about 65 kilo. He said, so you are approximately the half now. I was skinny then, already 2 weeks in hospitals. So, and I asked him how long he will come with us. He said, just up to Vienna, no further, because that is going just to Vienna. So I couldn't order him to do something. He asked me about my parents, and if I have been in Budapest. I said, yes, I've been, but I haven't been of. He asked me about a nightclub. I said, I don't know. I've been in that nightclub. I didn't want to tell you. Finally, he went out. But I remember one thing, when they come in, the whole group, about 4 or 5 people, that young doctor who was there in the morning, he showed me, there is there. That means this is the man. So, and they brought in already, again, the papers. They showed, so you there. So there is that means I am the Jew. He was a very fine man. The most interesting thing is that next morning, everybody got breakfast. I didn't get nothing. Suddenly, the cook from the wagon came in and asked. I was second from the door. Rudolph, I said, I am. He brought me special breakfast. Not what the other got, but I got 4 times double sandwiches with the best things, sardines, with honey and butter, and the best sandwiches. I didn't get a soup like the other one. I got such a big chocolate. I got the chocolate. And lunchtime, it's unbelievable. I got a bottle of French champagne. That was my lunchtime. So next evening, yeah, the most interesting thing with him was that when he has already a discussion with me about for a quarter an hour and asked me, and you, what do you need? You, what do you need? I said, doctor, I have shocking pains in that leg, but not in the leg, just, how you call this?
Ankle.
Ankle. I said, don't. And I hadn't slept about for 2 nights. So he said to his assistant, give him this and this and this. And I got 4 tablets. When he went out, came the man who was serving the wagon all day. I asked him, Sonny, the sanities, Sonny, what's that? He was listening to the conversation. He said, you complain you have pains and you haven't sleep. So 2 is for sleeping and 2 is for the painkiller. I was so anxious about for a little bit of sleep. I didn't care nothing. I take the 4 tablets and I asleep. In the morning, everybody was already up when they brought me that special breakfast. And so was it. So the second occasion that I find human being between the doctors in the hospitals. That particular paper where it was written or everything about myself, I saw it the 3rd time. The 3rd time I saw it, I was already in Budapest, Margit Island in Budapest. There was that plastic transfer made on my hand, that operation. So there, they make it, in those days I could walk already, having the cast already removed from me. And I don't know, some about higher ranking officers came there, and it was some checkup. And our doctor, the chief doctor from that hospital, and those papers, the documents was lying on the bed. He was standing next to the bed. Who was standing? Who couldn't stand, he was lying. And there was a whole delegation, and they come to my bed. I was the only Jew in that hospital. And they came there, and the chief doctor from that hospital said to the delegation, oh, this is a Jew. He said, what's the trouble? He's a Jew, but he's injured. The other man asked, a high-ranking officer, he came to me a little bit closer, he said to me, how long have you been on the front? I said, in 20 months. You have been injured, yes. And how long have you been in hospital? I said, I'm already about 3/4 of a year in different hospitals, and I explained him in different hospitals. So that day, I saw those documents about myself the 3rd time.
In 1943, the Prime Minister of Hungary at that time was Miklós. Now, he had adopted a series of political measures which extremely irritated the German government. One of the things he'd done was recognize the Badoglio government of Italy, which is a non-fascist government taken over after the fall of Mussolini. He had also allowed some relaxation of the censorship which was occurring in the press that time in Hungary. So some of the politicians and papers had written some anti-war articles and speeches. They were allowed to bring these things to the public. He had also asked Hitler to pull out his Hungarian troops and to allow them to be stationed in the Carpathian Mountain region to supposedly defend the borders. And he had not done anything to solve the Jewish problem. He had successfully resisted Hitler's demands that the Jews be deported from Hungary. He would not allow the physical deportation of Jewish people. Now, these are some of the factors which would lead to the Nazi occupation of Hungary. SS Brigadeführer Edmund Wiesenmeyer had submitted 2 lengthy reports on the Hungarian situation in 1943. And along with the reports of the spies for the Nazis, it was decided that Hungary would be invaded, plans were drawn up, and it would be called Operation Marguerite. It was to take place in March of 1944. German troops massed along the borders under the guise of war maneuvers, and on March 19, 1944, the Germans had marched into Hungary proper.
Now, life in Budapest was quieted down because the King of Hungary, he did have a pact with Germany. They were allies, but he did not allow to be the Jewish, to take the Jewish people out into concentration camps. So actually it was very quiet in Budapest, and life was going on. We had Jewish organizations there, and we used to get together, and we had a nice Jewish temple, not far. I used to go to services sometimes, and we had dances, in the Jewish community, sort of a community center, and we had dates and going out, and on weekends, most of the time I used to go out. There was an island in Budapest which was called Marguerite Island. And on that island they used to have all kinds of activities. You could go skating, you could go swimming, you could go playing tennis or those kind of things, sports, or you could go dancing and take a boat ride. It was a lot of fun, and it wasn't too expensive. You could stay the whole day and, for little money and enjoy yourself. And life was going on pretty quiet until when it came March 19, when the Nazi Party became stronger and stronger, and they tried to overthrow the king. So Germany gave him the okay to start a revolution, and try to occupy all the radio stations and the police stations and so forth. And that's what happened. March 19, all of a sudden, they started, shooting was starting to go on. And they promised the Germans, as soon as this Nazi party is going to start the revolution, they're going to come in and help them out and to win. And that's what happened. There was maybe for 2-3 days a little shooting going on, and the Germans came in with the big tanks, and the Hungarians couldn't defend themselves. And they occupied the radio station and the police station and all the government places, and they took over Hungary. And then they were following the same laws as Germany. Well, as soon as we saw the German tanks and the German soldiers come in to help those Nazis, we knew that the Germans are going to take it over. And it was a sad thing to look at, because we knew that it's not going to be the same as it was before. As a matter of fact, as soon as they occupied, all of a sudden, they started to round up the Jewish people. They put them in a ghetto, and the younger people, they called into forced labor camps. And that's when I was called in, sometimes in May. I had to go to the forced labor camp.
Now, in addition to the Wehrmacht, in the Luftwaffe divisions which came into Hungary. Ernst Kaltenbrunner, the head of the RSHA, which was the security organ of the Nazi government, had SS units brought in after the regular combat troops entered. There were two units, one of them consisting of 500 to 600 Gestapo, SD, and SS men, was commanded by Hans Geschke. The other unit, made up of roughly 200 men, was commanded by Adolf Eichmann, who was in charge of the Jewish Affairs Office in the RSHA. This was the man who would implement the final solution in Hungary. In Eichmann's Sonderkommando were some of his most tried and experienced men. Dieter Wisłocki had deported Jews from Slovakia and Greece. Theodor Denica had deported Jews from France, Italy, and Bulgaria. Siegfried Seidel was the first commandant of Theresienstadt. Franz Novak was a tried transportation expert. There were other men, 16 in all, who would head the Sonderkommando, and these men would all work with the newly established pro-German government. The Germans now demonstrated their efficiency at implementing their plans and adapting to local conditions. Hungarian cabinet ministers, senior officials, and generals were replaced with pro-German Nazi stooges. Ernst Kaltenbrunner had Laszlo Andrei appointed as Secretary of State and Laszlo Baki as Undersecretary to the Minister of the Interior, an anti-Semite named Andor Jaros. Lieutenant Colonel Laszlo Ferenczy of the Hungarian Gendarmerie was appointed to head the ghettoization and deportation program for Jews of Hungary and the acquired territories. The plan was simple. It had worked before. Following the decrees of Heydrich from September of 1939, Jews were rounded up from the small villages and hamlets and put in larger cities where railroad lines or railroad junctions were located. Jews were taken out of the economic aspects of life around them. Their bank accounts were frozen, businesses were taken, they were starved, put on starvation rations, and forced to do various work, construction work, cleaning up streets, anything, until they were deported. Deportation occurred and they were taken to extermination camps where they were outright exterminated, or they were put to work where eventually they would die through ill treatment under forced labor in the camps and other institutions.
Well, right after March 19, I don't know, maybe a few days later, the government, the Nazi government, the Hungarian government, started to put in new laws against the Jewish people, new decrees. And I wasn't there more than about 3-4 weeks, because I was called in right away to the forced labor camp. Now, whatever happened after that, I really don't know, because I wasn't there. But while I was there, every day there were all kinds of new laws to get after the Jewish people.
It took the Germans less than a month to set up the ghettoization program. The Jews were officially being ghettoized on April 15th, which was the last day of Passover. And the first Jews to be put into ghettos were the Jews of Carpathia. The next Jews would be the Jews of Northern Romania. Hungary had been divided into 6 different sections. Zone 1 was the Jews in Carpatho-Ruthenia in northeast Hungary. Zone 2 were the Jews in northern Transylvania. Zone 3 were the Jews in northern Hungary in the area from Kassa to the borders of the Third Reich. Zone 4 was the southern parts of Hungary east of the Danube. Zone 5 was the southwest parts of the country west of the Danube. In Zone 6 was Budapest and its suburbs. In Zone 1, 17 temporary ghettos were established, and a total of 144,000 Jews were put into the ghettos. In Zone 2, which was Transylvania, 7 ghettos were established with a total of 97,000 Jews. All in all, in the end, 289,000 Jews would be deported from the region of the Carpathian Mountains and directly south of it, northern Transylvania, the Transylvanian Alps.
It was very bad. Nobody can get out from the ghetto. And then there was shortage food.
What did you eat, and was it surrounded by barbed wire? Or?
We were a very short time in the ghetto. We had a little food to eat, a very short time. They took us right away to Auschwitz.
How did they take you? Were they real brutal? Did they beat you?
Brutal, brutal, very much. The Hungarian army came in and they said, everybody out to the street. And the people was afraid. They thought that they will kill right on place. And then they took the people that took us to the train, and they put it in cattle wagons, like cows, like horses, without food, without water, without restrooms. 2 days, 2-3 days we were there until we came to Auschwitz, in concentration camp.
A few streets were blocked off. You couldn't leave them. And whoever lived in those houses, who lived there before, they were obliged to take in more families. They were obliged. They had to give up extra rooms for another family. We were 2, 4, 5 people put in a family who lived already there. There was 2 more families put in to this same house. Everybody had a room. Bathroom, there were no toilets anyway, so everybody had to go to the outhouse. So there was no problem with the toilets or with the bathrooms because there was none. We had to share the kitchen. Everybody had his corner and cook for himself. And that was the case for all the people who lived in those streets. They were blocked. Everybody had to give up a part of their house.
How did you receive food?
There was, I can't remember, there were a few stores still open in the ghetto, whoever had. We weren't in the ghetto for too long, I think 3 or 4 weeks. So everybody had reserved in advance, prepared whatever they could. It was very, very hard and problem. It was a problem, but I don't know how we solved it. We survived with less. We survived with less. And then one day they announced that by tomorrow everybody pack his, you were allowed to take with you only as much as you could carry on your bag. And if you were taken to a synagogue, to certain synagogues, certain streets, they didn't take everybody at the same time because there were too many people. So there were 3 transports from Sziget. They blocked off streets up till here. You are coming tomorrow morning, line up in the street, and they took us to the synagogue. Took us to the synagogue, they registered there, everybody. We had to give up jewelry. Whoever had a little ring, a chain, earrings, any jewelry you have to give it up there. They searched your baggage, And we slept over in the synagogue overnight, and the next morning they took us to the train. Everybody was put into cattle trains, as many people they could. And we traveled like this for 3 days. 3 days we were in cattle trains, and the train stopped from time to time just to allow us to take a little water and empty the buckets with waste. That was all, until we arrived to Auschwitz for 3 days.
I was in my aunt's house in Bischow. My aunt was a photographer. They were photographers. Fruchters was the name. And I went with them to the ghetto. From the house, they take away only my mother and my 2 sisters. My brother was already in Arbeitslager. My father, they took away separately because he was in Corner-Kaste. During 1948, there was a Corner-Kaste.
Corner-Kaste?
Corner.
There's a big palace over there. They take, the Hungarian take over there. They said, oh, you are a communist, you are this, you are this. They take over there and they beat him until...
Okay.
And they punished them.
What kind of food, and how did you get food in this ghetto?
I don't know. They weren't too much time in the ghetto. Only about 2 weeks, or maybe less.
Did you get to UN?
In Bischow.
In Bischow.
That's where...
We should take you to States, we should take you to Auschwitz?
From Bischow I went to Auschwitz.
The Germans came in, and a big officer from the Germans moved in my apartment, met his worker, how you call it, I don't even know how they call it. He worked for the officer. And the officer said to me, when he knew that I'm Jewish, he said to me, you run away where you can, because the Germans coming in, they're gonna send you in camps. But we did not believe it. And he said, please do it. But we never did it. Then the German, because we didn't believe him, the Germans came in and they took away. Before the Germans came in, we had to give up our business. They took away our business. They came, they took away our business. And then they took us in a camp, in a concentration camp that was like a ghetto. They called it ghetto then. That was in Akna, Slatina, me and the baby. And my husband wasn't home. He was in the labor camp. He worked. We was set up in schools, and we was sleeping on the floor, and they put straw on the floor, and we was sleeping on the floor. And we had a maid home. She was a Gentile, and she heard that I am in Akla Slatina in that camp. She came and smuggled herself in and bring me food there. And she wanted to take my baby. She said she's going to take care of him. I should give it to her, and I didn't want to. I didn't want to be separate from the baby. I know that the Hungarians were there. The Hungarian took us.
Hungarian gendarmerie?
The Hungarian and Germans, but the most the Hungarian were there. The Hungarian took us to Auschwitz. In Auschwitz already, not the Hungarian, the Germans were there. We were the very first Jews in Rachov. That was the day, the last day of Passover. We were collected, my father and about 12 families. We brought into a small synagogue and they searched us. We could only take from our home what we can carry, which was very little food because it was still Passover and we were observant Jews. So we didn't have any bread or other things because we were observing Passover. My sister took both of her children and came voluntarily, and her words were to my father, "Papa, whatever happens to you, happens to me." She came voluntarily at that time. They were all gathered, and my father-in-law was the first one to be shot. These people were brought in the following 2 days later to Rachov. The local militia knew that eventually all the Jews will be gathered and brought into a ghetto. But the law wasn't out yet. But we were collected and we were brought to Tiszalonka. We were still on an open train. What I mean on an open train, we were just watched. All the 3 or 4 cars, which were with Jews, we were watched by one policeman. But we were so gullible, we didn't believe that something bad is going to happen to us. We believed that we're going to be returned home, that they'll see that it's a mistake or whatsoever, and we're going to be brought back home. It didn't happen. We were brought into Tiszalonka, into a very open field, which was an old cemetery, without a tent, without anything over our heads. Eventually, in Tiszalonka, more and more Jews were brought in. We managed from this open cemetery to go into a Gentile's house. That particular house was also part of the ghetto, but this Gentile, whose name was Bakos, refused to leave his house. And he allowed us to go on the stable on top of the, in the stable on top of the attic. We were actually, there was a little hay yet. There were no animals in the stable, but there was a little hay. And we managed with a small little ladder to climb up in the stable on the top, actually on the loft sort of. And that's where we were, without any covers, which was pretty cold yet, but we huddled together, and this is how we managed. We managed to get, my Hungarian is actually perfect, and I played with I was still a child then, and I played with the Hungarian Jewish children, and I came into their house. They did not know that I'm from the Carpathian Mountains. They despised the people, the Jews from the Carpathian Mountains. As a matter of fact, I heard there quite a lot of talk against the Jews from the Carpathian Mountains. They didn't know, and everybody was given an afternoon, I would call it's like a tea time thing. The children were handed 2 slices of bread with jam on it, and I was given the 2 slices of bread, and I grabbed it and I ran home. This is when they discovered that I'm from the Carpathian Mountains, because I didn't eat it, but I ran home with it. I went to share it with my family. That's when they started to be nice to us, and they gave us some flour, and they had an abundance of food because they were home.
they gave us some flour, they gave us some oil, but it didn't last long because the next day we were taken again by train. The living condition in Tiszalonka at that time I found it terrible, but the concentration camps were worse. But it was terrible because you were with your family and without food and without, it was already hunger was there, but we were still together. This is the advantage we had. At the time that we were in the stable on the attic, there was no organization yet. What I mean, it was not organized. The people that were brought in had to tend for themselves, feed themselves, buy their way into some kind of a shelter. Weeks later, about 2 or 3 weeks later, the youth.Then stepped in, and means it was elected, like in many other ghettos, and they were the ones that helped to organize more shelter, soup kitchens, and other provisions. There were no hospitals there. There were no nurses, no care for any of the ill. I had a very old grandmother who was also brought weeks later from Rachov to Tiszalonka. She was a very, very old, fragile lady. They managed to open up one room, and this room was like, let's say, 11 by 9, and there must have been at least 100 people laying side by side on the floor, on the bare floor. And my grandmother was among those laying there. We ourselves didn't have any access to any of the soup kitchens or to any other provisions. We were somehow in the beginning where the ghetto started. And it was still, the Gentile did not move out from his home, he remained there. And somehow nobody ever came to look for us, except when we were brought to Auschwitz. We were told by the youth.Then to go together on a certain field to be transported to Auschwitz. We were not told by the gendarmerie or by the SS. We were not told. We were told by the Jewish youth.Then, and they had their own police, the youth.Then Jewish police, which I assume, because we didn't have much contact with the other people. We were there in this particular, nobody bothered with us, and we didn't bother anybody. We just were there with it scooped up in this attic, in this stable. The toilet, there were outhouses there. So there was an outhouse which everybody used that was in that particular backyard that lived. Some of them were in the backyard, in the open, there at this particular place. And we managed, we still had it better than others because we were on the attic there in this stable.
Before they take us to the Tiszalonka, I have a little sister I had, and she come home and she said, "Oh, they talking there that they take us away," and she was crying. And the second day come the Hungarian gendarme, and they say we have to go, and they took in each house. They took away everything we had, and took us in the bed with yeah. They took us to Tiszalonka. They took away everything, the gold and everything, and they took us to Tiszalonka.
Could you tell me how you got food to eat when you were in the ghetto?
In the ghetto in Tiszalonka, they used to bring us with to eat. There we cooked, there we made a gribble, and we cooked. Then we were together with the parents, and what we eat already, many hungry, more hungry than eating.
They didn't have enough food.
What?
But they built a little hole and they were cooking there, you know, with wood.
Yeah.
Who brought you food?
The government sent, the Hungarian.
The Hungarian army, the Hungarian gendarme?
Yeah, the Hungarian army brought the food. This was twice a week came in the food and bread. There it was not too bad, you know. It was, we were on the Himmel.
Did you have a room that you slept in, or did you?
No,
where did you sleep in?
They made
Bunk beds.
shutters.
Tents.
Tents. And there will be
Outside?
outside.
Oh. They made tents, you know.
Tents. It was a big the land.
A big field?
Yeah, and then they put these tents. And there was two old Jews, Usher, and the other one, who was it? And they poured them. They didn't know what they're doing correctly. They were out from, they
lost their mind.
nearly killed them. They beat him so much till they died.
And the camp.
In Matisalka.
In Matisalka.
In Matisalka.
Camp. That was a camp.
In the tents, yeah. And when it was not raining, it was good in the tents. But when it was raining, all the wind and all this came in the tents. How can you do that? So we were already glad that they take us. We didn't know where they take us. Let's go. They took us in Wagonen. In the Wagonen. Yeah. And we went with the Hungarian soldiers till the board. After the board, they took us, the Germans took us. And so we went about 2 days and a half. And once a day, they give us, open the wagon, and they give us a bread and a little salami, and then we went. When we come to the German border, the Germans took us over. And we didn't know where we go, what is going to be. And then we still were together, all the family.
Luh to Matisalka, they took us by train, by freight trains. They took us with
in those cattle
horse,
wagons?
yeah, like cattle wagons. They took us first with trucks, with horse and buggies, to a town. They got us together with some trucks, and then they took us by train. And in Matisalka, we were living in a house which was in the attic. You know, the top?
Yes.
Is that what's called? Attic, eh? Yeah. And there we were always, I was already then a boy, 19 years old. I was trying to be together with my parents.
Right.
And with my 2 smaller children. I mean, we were 3 younger children. Because my father, when they took us, my father wanted I should run away and get in hiding. But I didn't want to do that, because I always thought I could help out the family. As a matter of fact, when they took us in the train to Auschwitz from Matisalka, we were in Matisalka 4 weeks, or maybe 5, or something like that, in ghetto. And they took us to work. And
doing all kinds of dirty work, cleaning whatever they had in mind, the Hungarian. And then they packed us up by trucks, to the train, to the freight train. They packed us in, and we were traveling to Auschwitz. And passing through the Slovak territory, my father wanted I should jump the train. I still didn't want to jump the train. And we didn't know much about Auschwitz. We didn't know that it exists, even things like that. And then we were passing through Krakow and to Auschwitz. And in Auschwitz, they separated us. I was there with my father and mother and 3 younger sisters. Because the older one, my brother, was in the Hungarian army, not army, but forced labor, like Hungarian forced labor. And my sister was also away 1 month, and one of my sisters was married from another ghetto taken away. So when I arrived in Birkenau, that's Auschwitz, and there we were approximately 10 days, and they separated my father on one side and me on the other side, and my mother away with the children, and we didn't see each other anymore. And there, from there, they sent us to a labor camp, which I was sent to Magdeburg. And from Magdeburg, first I was sent to Buchenwald. And in Buchenwald, they sent us to Magdeburg. And in Magdeburg, we were there quite a while, quite a few months. And they bombed, and I got also wounded by one of the bombs. They were bombing. But I was lucky, it wasn't too heavy, but I was able to get back on my feet.
The Hungarians created their ghettos for the only reason being to hold Jewish people until they could be deported. They served no use as a workforce. They did nothing whatsoever to promote Jewish labor for their war effort. All they wanted to do was to get rid of, expel, exterminate Jewish people in Hungary. Franz Novak, the transportation expert in the SS Sonderkommando, led by Adolf Eichmann, held a meeting with German railway officials on May 5th in Vienna, and the transportation was worked out to the satisfaction of Eichmann and the anti-Jewish Hungarian officials. Deportation started to Auschwitz on May 15th. And between May 15th and June 6th, all of the Jewish people who lived in zones 1 and 2, which was Carpathia in northern Transylvania and Transylvania itself, were all to be deported. 289,000 Jewish people in all, and that was mentioned on communication which Edmund Wiesenmeyer sent out to RSHA headquarters.